Hello, in this video I'm going to go over my dungeon tank build. I call this the Rush of Genius, and that is because of the sets I wear on this build. I run the Drake's Rush from Black Drake Villa and Arcasis Genius from Stone Garden. Then I use the Spalder of Ruin and Magma Incarnate. Now, if there's a healer present wearing Spalder of Ruin, then I would recommend changing to a monster setup, or you could even run a different mythic if you wanted to. But probably the most helpful in a dungeon is probably going to be like just for ad pulls, for example. Swarm Mother can help yank stuff in. Or if you want to give yourself more ultimate, put on Baron's Aldrris. Those two are some pretty good suggestions. There's a bunch of things you can do for monster sets, but this is really kind of implied to be run with 3 DPS, so that your damage is really high and you're pumping ultimate to them. So let's get into the build. As I said, I'm wearing Magma Incarnate with Drake's Rush and Spalder of Ruin and Arcasis Genius. Back bar Ice Staff as always. I'll go over these really slowly here. I have the Vadishran Sword and Board. This really helps to get ad pulls clumped together so you can just burn them down really quickly. I have this set up as a charged. I actually probably should change this to a decisive. I need to rebuild this one. This is kind of an old build where I was trying to focus on status effect application there, but anyway, charged with a hardening shield glyph, and then I have divines with a triglyph. All of my armor pieces on my tanks are triglyphed. If you can't afford to get high KJOs, I understand that. Sometimes they're crazy expensive. I typically buy them from the vendor in Imperial City for the Televar that I sparsely get. So I would recommend trying to split it up between mainly health glyphs and stamina glyphs, and then what you want to do is, I'll go over that next part here in a second, but you basically just want to make sure that you've got a big stamina bar for blocking, and your health bar is big enough where it needs to be. I should probably do a video on setting up a tank sometime here. But infused, I have stamina glyph here. You may need to use an infused crusher, I don't know. For the most part, DPS now are running around with a lot of penetration, so you don't really need the crusher anymore, especially if you're going to use the Runic Sunder taunt like I have. Penetration is pretty much handled with Major Minor Breach and then just this, because the DPS are running around with so much penetration, just not even having to build into it. So there's that. Medium, Magma Incarnate. Drake's Rush is reinforced. All of my armor pieces are divines with the exception of the chest piece I have in reinforced, and the reason I do that is just so that it gives me a little bit more tankiness when I'm running around. Just in case something hits me, I've got a little bit more armor to deal with it. I don't think that this is even necessary. You could probably do 7 divines if you wanted to. That being the 6 armor pieces and the shield. But I have Drake's Rush on the armor with the exception of the head and shoulders. All divines, all triglyphed. I haven't triglyphed these yet. I could probably do that. I think I have high KJOs. I just recently built this set, so going through all the changes with subclassing. I've got 20 characters, so mats can be kind of tight sometimes. All my jewelry on my tanks, every single build, is infused with Magicka reduction cost glyphs. It's really makes tanking a lot easier if you reduce the cost of your spells. In addition to that, I try to stay away from stamina skills a little bit. I have 3 of them on this build. That's a lot more than I normally have. I normally only have just the Runic Sunder. This is mainly for yanking together adds, and so there needs to be a little bit more stamina in the mix. So if you want to on this build setup, you could probably put on a stamina reduction skill cost to help. Since there's a little bit of stamina on this build, you could probably do that. Or even if you wanted to run Stone Giant, that would make Stone Giant cheaper if you got one stamina glyph lower. But just, I mean, making the Magicka skill stuff cost less is just a lot easier. So let's see, that's the armor. I'm always an Imperial on all my tanks. You can run whatever race you want, but I would seriously recommend trying the Imperial. It is so nice. It fits really well with the subclassing because you get the most maximum stats in terms of health and stamina, as well as the cost reduction in spells by 6%. That's really helpful. It makes it really easy to stack into a stamina bar like this to where you can get a pretty big stamina bar pretty easily. And then I am wearing the Atronach Mundus to buff my Magicka Magicka recovery. And then for my food, I always like to run the red Frothgar right here. This gives you a large amount of health, so you pretty much handle your health really easily, and then your mag recovery is really boosted with this. Really helps. I would suggest that food as well. For potions, I just use Tripots for when I'm tanking. These are homemade, and then these are obviously Crown Store ones. But so that's the gear, that's the Mundus, the attributes and stuff. Let's get into the skills. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do the CP first. I always run Ironclad and then these 3 right here. With the new setup of subclassing, if you're using Soldier of Apocrypha, you don't even need to use Bulwark. If you want to run around a little bit tankier, you could slot this instead. If you know there's not any damage over time in the dungeon or trial that you're in, you could run this instead of Enduring Resolve. Damage over time is really only present mostly in the newer content. So there's something you could do there. The red tree, usually I just run these 2 with Bastion. If you're not in a boss fight, I would put Celerity on just to give your movement speed a little bit more, because most ad pulls you don't need this slotted. I just have it slotted by default. So there's the CP. Now we'll get into the skills a little bit here. So as I always run on my tanks now, Earthen Heart, Bone Tyrant, and Soldier of Apocrypha. This is such a huge skill line. This gives you over 5,000 armor just by taunting something, because you're going to get 2,200 armor here, and you're going to get another 3,271 while it's active. So as long as you keep the Runic Sunder taunt active, then that is going to always be up. So that's why this skill line is so powerful. You can literally proc the passive of armor just by one skill being slotted. This right here is not even worth trying to build into. The recoveries from this are very, very minuscule. I wouldn't bother doing anything to try and bump this up. There's just better ways to get recoveries. However, this right here is another thing that you can proc just for casting the one button. Very, very nice to give your group minor evasion. And if they're running front bar dual wield daggers, they could also slot Quick Cloak or Deadly Cloak, whichever morph they want to use of that, and that skill will give them major evasion to pair with it, so they get 30% reduction in damage from area of effect damage, which is the most common for DPS to be inflicted by, because if your tank is holding taunt and attention of everything, then most of the stuff that they get hit by is area of effect. Um, this right here only procs when you consume a crux. I don't typically run a crux consumer on my tank builds. I like to keep my crux up so that while I'm tanking, I get the bonus from the very bottom sentence here. While slotted, your damage taken is reduced by 2% per active crux. So if you get 3 crux up, you get 6% reduction in damage taken, which I've shown in other videos. All you have to do is be in combat and hit that 3 times, and then you've got this lasts for 30 seconds as long as you don't consume a crux. All you got to do is taunt something to reset the timer, and all 3 of those crux stay up. So it's really, really easy to keep this maintained and up. So I would recommend doing that. So Bone Tyrant, this is here for the reduction in damage over time. This also gives you recoveries when enemies die. This right here is a healing received buff. I don't have anything on my front bar because this is kind of set up for ad pull collection right now. And then there's a true passive of max health. Earthen Heart, this is a great skill line for tanking. It's really kind of intended to be the healer skill line, ironically, for Dragon Knight, but it's really gels well, really, really well with these other 2 skill lines. Because the other skill lines give you damage mitigation and armor and all that. This kind of gives you what you're missing out of those. It gives you the recoveries. It gives you a defensive ultimate. Gives you group buffs like this one here. This one's not as common anymore with Arcanist running Inspired Scholarship and stuff like that. However, this right here gives your group a shield. It gives yourself major mending, and it will give your group minor brutality when you cast any of these skills, but this is the most common one that gets hit. If you're in a less damaging situation, maybe you're in an easy dungeon that you're not going to die, then I would say pop this on instead of the shield and just get the damage up on the boss and get a nuke going. This is mostly a PvP skill and immobilization. Bosses are immune to stun, so this is not going to work on them. So I would just, you could use it for a heal, I suppose. It's not super great for that, so I would honestly skip this in most situations. And then Cinder Storm, this can be a really good ground heal for your group if you need them to stand in something, and it only ticks 326 magicka per second, so it's not a super big drain on your magicka. So that's the skill lines that I'm on. Obviously, I'm on a sword and board on my front bar, as you can see. Back bar, destruction staff. Just remember, you do not want to fill in this passive right here on a tank, ever. This makes it so that you block with Magicka instead of Stamina. You don't want to do that. All your armor passives filled in. I always like to fill in these passives here, just in case I slot something, then I don't have to worry about filling in all that stuff as well. As I said, I am an Imperial. For the alchemy, you really only need to focus on the medicinal use, and then provisioning. Make sure your food passives are up so that your food lasts longer. Okay, so that's the skills. I didn't actually do the skills, did I? So I have defensive stance here. This is a really good one just to kind of slot and forget. This reduces your damage. I should say increases the amount of damage that you can block, and it reduces your block cost is what it does passively. You don't ever have to cast this. It just sits there on the bar. If you have the stamina, it's a kind of an expensive cost there for the stamina shield. But it's mostly there just for the passives. This is my main taunt, Runic Sunder. This does quite a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into it as thoroughly. If you're interested in this, I did make an isolated video just to explain how powerful this taunt is. I would recommend going to watch that. Check out my channel, go into my tank playlist, and that you can find the video in there. Igneous Shield, as I said, or Igneous Shield, excuse me. This gives your group a damage shield of 4,124. It gives yourself a damage shield of 10,311. It also will give you major mending for 3 seconds. I have Razor Caltrops here to give me AoE Major Breach. And then this is the skill that procs the Vatishran Sword and Board. This is Power Slam. And back bar. Beckoning Armor. I use this morph in dungeons because this helps with pulling adds together. This is kind of like a Swarm Mother almost type of skill. When enemies strike you from range, they will be pulled towards you once every 2 seconds. So this can really help you grab stuff, and it taunts them also. So it's not just a chain in, it also taunts them. This also gives you major and minor resolve for 20 seconds. Now the other morph will last longer, but it doesn't have the chain in ability. So keep that in mind. You can use the other morph that lasts longer, however you're going to lose that pull that's there on this. So for the Olsford Contingency, or Olsford Contingency, I can never say this right. They need to change the name of it. I have damage shield, damage mitigation, and minor protection. That's usually how I set this skill up. It just really is pretty strong. They recently changed the cost to go up on this. It used to be a little bit cheaper, but it's still worth using as it is. It's very strong. It gives everybody that's within your range a damage shield of 12,000. Just that big. Elemental Susceptibility. This is absolutely essential for tanking along with this. These two are just absolutely necessary. Now, if you're going to use Pulsar, you maybe don't need to use this as much because this is going to proc the chilled status on your enemies. Especially if you have a back bar charge staff. That's something you could do for add pulls as well, is use a charge staff on the back bar. But this will apply minor mangle, which will reduce their health bar, and it also gives you minor protection for 6 seconds. So you've got 2 sources of minor protection here, but if you drop this, then this is still there. So let's just kind of get into how I run the build a little bit. Obviously you can see I've got Spalder of Ruin, and this is my ad pull set up here. So basically when you're approaching an ad pull, I like to taunt the big nasty guy in the room. So let's say this is set up just like this. In order to get these guys to stack on this big nasty guy, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna taunt him, throw my Caltrops, power slam just like that, and that will yank everything in. As you can see, that sword and board yanked everybody, and they have, I'll do it one more time here. This is another reason why this sword and board is awesome. Even if the stuff doesn't get pulled, the Major Maim applies. That's Major Maim, that buff that's ticking on them. I'll do it one more time so you can see it. Didn't proc that time. It also procs Drake's Brush, as you can see. I'm glowing there. But there it is. There's the Major Maim. There's a delay on it, so you have to kind of stand right where you need to be. The Major Maim procs when the pull happens. So basically, I should probably do a video on this too. It's not cooperating with me. There's the Major Maim on these guys here. But essentially this sword and board is very powerful for dungeons and ad pulls. You apply Major Maim for 10 seconds in an AoE, and most ad pulls are going to die within that time, so that reduces their damage done by 10% while they're up, and then you can hit them with Minor Maim pretty easily. Let's finish off the back bar here. I have Warhorn on the back bar. Probably in some cases you could even run a Meteor or something like that. If your team is at critical damage cap, that's going to be a little tougher to hit in a dungeon, so you actually might need Warhorn in a dungeon. If you're not going to run Lucent Echoes, I would recommend running Warhorn on your back bar like this. Let's see, is there anything else to cover? I've covered the gear, the skills, and the CP. I think that's everything. So that's pretty much it, how I run this build. For boss fights, I will say this is these two here are flex skills depending on what you're doing. This is for ad pulls, really, as well as this. So for boss fights, what I would change is I would put Necrotic Potency on your bar, and then I use a different version of shield throw. So this is still my heal with my source of Major Maim for a single target, so that's what I pop in there. And then for the back bar, I would probably put on maybe a Cinder Storm on the last here, just to help with group heals or something like that. This is really just kind of a utility skill. You could put Stone Giant on your bar, I would recommend, like I said, putting it on your front bar. You don't want to really try to manage that on your back bar. That would be a pain. But this is really kind of a flex spot here, back here. These two right here will give you major, minor breach. This is minor Maim, major Maim, damage reduction taken in ultimate generation, and shields on both bars with major and minor resolve. This is pretty much going to have you covered in most situations. I guess I should show you what it looks like buffed up. You get your major and minor resolve. You pop your Tripot. And as you can see, I'm not at armor cap right now, but that's because I have not procced Runic Sunder. That procs the Soldier of Apocrypha skill line, and there you have it. I'm over. I just need to reproc major minor resolve now. There you go. I'm over the armor cap now. So that's all you got to do, is make sure that your major minor resolve is up and you taunt something, and you'll be over armor cap with this easily. My magic recovery, as you can see, is quite good. Health bar, these are not really sitting where they need to be right now because my glyphs are goofy. But thank you for watching this video. I'm going to do some more videos when I can. But I just wanted to get out a dungeon tank in case anybody was interested in what I do for that. Check out my channel for all of my other videos. If you're interested or like this video, go onto my channel and go down into my created playlists. I have all of my content separated by that, so it's easy to find, and it's organized by subject. Thank you very much for watching it. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.